What if I told you that December 25th was a pagan day? Or what if I told you the pagans used December 25th as a day to complete a satanic ritual? What if I told you that? I guarantee most people have never heard that before. But the problem is, we don't ask questions. For instance, why do you bring a tree into your house on Christmas? Why do you put that star on the top of that tree? Why do you also deck it with ornaments with silver and gold? Also, why do people kiss under the mistletoe? Why do we light candles on Christmas? Why do you do all of these things? The answer is you don't even know. So what we're going to do, we're going to get into the history and we're going to find out where these things come from so you can make a conscious decision whether you want to continue to follow and celebrate Christmas or not. We're going to be reading from this book called Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. It says the festivals of Rome are innumerable, but 5 of the most important may be singled out for elucidation, viz. Christmas Day, Lady Day, Easter, the Nativity of St. John, and the Feast of Assumption. Each and all of these can be proved to be Babylonian. And first, as to the festival in honor of the birth of Christ, or Christmas, how comes it that the festival was connected with the 25th of December? There is not a word in the scriptures about the precise day of his birth or the time of year when he was born. What is recorded there implies that whatsoever time his birth took place, it could not have been on the 25th of December. December 25th goes all the way back to ancient Babylon, all right? They had paganistic customs and rituals. It was during the time of the winter and summer solstice. The winter solstice is the time where the night is at its longest extent. And the summer solstice is the time when the daytime is during its longest extent. So the pagans back then took these 2 days and they started to make deities out of them, with the winter solstice being dark, representing evil, and the summer solstice being the light, representing the good. The pagans took these days and they started to make deities out of these days. So, for instance, like the Egyptian god Horus, he was born on December 25th. The Greek god Helios, he was born on December 25th. The Greco-Roman god Apollo, he was born on December 25th. The Hindu god Mithra was also born on December 25th. And also Baal, who was named after Nimrod, who after Nimrod's death became deified by his mother Semiramis, and who was said to become the sun god, he was also born on December 25th. So all the historians and the elite know that December 25th was always used as a day to conjure up demons and to complete a satanic ritual. They already know this already. So what they've done is they've taken the Bible and they've amalgamated it with this pagan day and masked it over with Christ and got the whole world celebrating this demonic paganistic day without them even knowing. At the time that the angels announced his birth to the shepherds of Bethlehem, they were feeding their flocks by night in the open fields. Now, no doubt the climate of Palestine is not so severe as the climate of this country, but even there, though the heat of the day be considerable, the cold of the night from December to February is very piercing. And it was not the custom for the shepherds of Judea to watch their flocks in the open fields later than about the end of October. So what the Bible does substantiate is that during the time that Christ was born, the shepherds were out in the fields grazing the flock. So Christ could not have been born during the time of December 25th because it was not the custom of the shepherds of Judea to be out in the dead middle of winter trying to graze flock. That is just not a custom of the shepherds of Judea. At the birth of Christ, every woman and child was to go to be taxed at the city whereto they belonged. Whether some had long journeys, but the middle of winter was not fitting for such a business, especially for women with child and children to travel in. Therefore, Christ could not be born in the depth of winter. You see that? They said Christ could not be born in the depth of winter because during that time, Christ's parents had to go back to the city of Bethlehem where Christ was born to pay a tax because the Romans set up publicans so people could come back to the cities where they were from to pay tribute. And the Romans would not have set up a time like that during that time of winter because people had to travel. If you know anything about the history of Judea, if you know anything about the history of the Israelites, you know that they traveled on foot, they traveled on camels, right? But they don't have heat to keep themselves warm for them to travel like that. Like we have today, we got cars. We can jump in a car and drive 50 miles to an area because we got heat in our car. They didn't have that back then. They had to travel on foot and they had to travel with animals. So the Romans would not have set up a taxation time during the dead middle of winter for these people to come pay tribute. It just would not happen. So that also proves that Christ was not born during the time of December 25th. Okay, so let's get the definition of Christmas out of the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. It says Christmas, the anniversary of the birth of Christ, and its observance celebrated by most Protestants and Roman Catholics on December 25th, by Eastern Orthodox churches on January 6th, and by the Armenian Church on January 19th. The first mention of its observance on December 25th is in the time of Constantine, about AD 325. The date of the birth of Christ is not known. See, all of the scholars know that Christ was not born on December 25th. They know this already. They know this is factual information to all of the scholars. They know this. Constantine even knew when he set it up. He knew that Christmas had nothing to do with Christ. He knew that already. He knew it was a pagan day to complete a satanic ritual. He knew that. How then did the Roman Church fix on December the 25th as Christmas Day? Why thus? Long before the 4th century and long before the Christian era itself, a festival was celebrated among the heathen at the precise time of the year in honor of the birth of the son of the Babylonian queen of heaven. And back during the time of the Romans, they had a day called Saturnalia. It was the same thing as Christmas. The same way you celebrate Christmas today, they celebrated Saturnalia on the same scale that we celebrate Christmas today, where these men would walk around with no clothes on. They would engage in sexual acts with other men. They would give each other gifts and sing songs. And it was the same way you celebrate Christmas today. That's where the concept of Christmas came from, Saturnalia. So these people were celebrating Christmas way before they ever heard about a Christ. Way before they ever heard about a Christ, they were celebrating Christmas. The Romans were, with Saturnalia. This Saturnalia, it started out with 2 days, from December 17th to December 19th. And then they changed it all the way to a week. So the Romans of antiquity were celebrating Christmas before they knew anything about a Christ. They were celebrating Christmas. The only difference is they was worshiping the Babylonian god Nimrod, reincarnated as Talmud. And they changed his name to Saturn. It's the same God. It is the same exact God. And if you know anything about the history of religion, you know all the religion comes from Rome. Rome gave everybody their religion. That's where the Baptists come from. That's where the Seventh-day Adventists come from. That's where the Jehovah's Witnesses come from. That's where the Catholics come from. That's where Christianity comes from. It all comes from ancient Rome. And it may be fairly presumed that in order to conciliate the heathen and to swell the number of the nominal adherents of Christianity, the same festival was adopted by the Roman Church, giving it only the name of Christ. This tendency on the part of Christians to meet paganism halfway was very early develop. So during the time of